Wind keened through the hollow boards of the ranch house, carrying the sound of a child's thin wail into the dying light. Eli Carson bent over the cradle he'd built from pine scraps, his rough hands trembling as he lifted the swaddled newborn. The baby's face was red and desperate, her cry small, then smaller still, until it broke off into ragged gasps. "Come on now, little one," he muttered, voice raw. "Don't you quit on me." He pressed the cracked nipple of a bottle against her lips. Just water and sugar, all he had left. The infant turned her head, refusing it. A faint rattle rose from her chest. Eli's throat worked as he swallowed the dread down, the kind that makes a man forget how to breathe. The last of the sun glared off Martha's freshly dug grave just beyond the window. The cross he'd made leaned sideways in the wind. A shovel still stood in the ground beside it, blade smeared with clay the color of rust. He'd tried to pray. He'd tried to cry. But the desert didn't care for either. The baby whimpered again, weaker now. Eli laid her down and stumbled outside, boots crunching the dry earth. The horizon shimmered, red dust swirling like smoke. He hitched his horse with shaking fingers and swung into the saddle. The wind tore at his hat as he rode toward town, the world nothing but noise and glare and distance. Every hoofbeat echoed the same thought. She can't die too. She can't. By the time Red Hollow came into view, the sun was gone. Only lamplight flickered from the windows. The general store, the saloon, the chapel where the bell never rang anymore. Eli reined up in front of the boarding house and slid off, barely feeling his legs. He knocked once, then again, harder. Mrs. Trudy Palmer opened the door, her face pale behind her kerchief. "Eli? Lord, it's near dark. I need help," he rasped. "The baby, she ain't eaten since morning." "Martha's," his voice cracked. He forced a rest through clenched teeth. "You nursed your boy, didn't you? Could you just once?" Trudy drew herself back as if struck. "I can't. Folks would talk, Eli. You know they would." He stared at her. Behind him, the wind whistled through the porch slats. "Please," he said. "I'm sorry." The door closed slow, like the sound of mercy shutting. He tried the preacher's wife next, then the widow Boone, then a stranger at the inn with a baby of her own. All turned him away, one after another. He saw their eyes, the way they looked at him like a man already cursed. When he mounted up again, his horse snorted and shifted, sensing the weight in him. He rode home without a word. The moon rose cold and sharp above the plains. Coyotes sang far off, thin voices fading under the wind. By the time he reached the ranch, the cabin windows were black. He pushed through the door, heart pounding, and froze. The crying had stopped. He stumbled to the cradle. The baby lay still, her lips dry, her breath faint as dust. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He lifted her, rocking hard, desperate. "Stay with me, Clara. You hear me? You stay." The floorboards creaked behind him, a sound not made by wind. Eli turned, reaching instinctively for the rifle by the door. But there was only a shadow there, small and trembling. Then a knock. 3 soft taps. He opened the door. A girl stood on the porch, shawl pulled tight, hair loose and glinting in the moonlight. Sarah Mae Harper, barely 19, maybe less. Her eyes were wide, but steady, the kind of eyes that had already buried too much. "I heard her," she said. Her voice was hoarse, wind-bitten. "Your baby crying." Eli didn't answer. The wind whipped grit into their faces. Sarah looked past him, toward the cradle. "My boy's gone," she whispered. "Since the winter. But there's still milk." He stared, not understanding. Then his jaw tightened. "You don't have to." She shook her head. "I know I don't." The air between them was heavy, full of things that couldn't be spoken. Not out here, not between a widowed man and a lonely girl. Sarah stepped inside. Her boots made small, hesitant sounds on the floor. She knelt beside the cradle, unwrapping her shawl. Eli turned away, face shadowed, hands trembling. The baby stirred, a weak cry, then another, stronger this time. Sarah's voice broke in a whisper. "That's it, sweetheart. There you go." The sound filled the cabin, soft and alive, drowning the wind outside. Eli stood at the window, staring out toward the grave. The cross gleamed faintly in the moonlight. For the first time in days, he let out a breath that didn't shake. Behind him, Sarah hummed something low, an old lullaby, cracked and forgotten. The baby quieted. When Eli finally turned, Sarah was sitting by the fire, the child sleeping against her shoulder, her eyes closed in exhaustion. He took a step forward, then stopped, unsure what to say. Words didn't fit moments like this. Outside, the wind had died. Only the rustle of the fire remained, and the faint, steady breathing of two souls who had nothing left to give but life itself. Eli sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at them both. The old floor clock ticked, slow and hollow. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried, one lonely note swallowed by the dark. He thought of Martha's hands, of her laugh, of the promise he'd made her. You'll never be alone. Maybe he'd failed her. Maybe not. The baby shifted, a small sigh escaping her. Sarah's fingers moved automatically, smoothing the blanket, the gesture tender and practiced. Eli rubbed a hand over his face. "Thank you," he said, barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't open her eyes. "Don't thank me," she murmured. "Just keep her breathing." He nodded, though she couldn't see. The fire popped. Sparks drifted up the chimney like tiny souls taking flight. Eli looked once more at the grave outside, then back at the woman and the child. The world felt smaller now, quieter, but still turning. He reached for the shovel leaning by the door and set it back on the wall, the dirt still caked on its blade. Then he sat in silence, watching the glow of the hearth move across their faces until the night slipped away. And somewhere in the dark, an old voice, half memory, half wind, whispered the first line of a legend not yet born. The baby's cry split the dawn like a knife. Eli jolted awake in the chair by the hearth, hand already gripping for the rifle beside him. But it wasn't danger, just hunger. Always hunger. Sarah was already moving. She lifted Clara from the cradle with tired arms, her shawl slipping down one shoulder. The firelight caught the pale streak in her hair, the one grief had left behind. Eli turned his face away as she sat near the flames, cradling the child close, humming the same low tune she'd hummed every morning since that first night. Outside, wind scraped against the walls, carrying the sound of church bells from Red Hollow, faint, distant, and accusing. Eli rose, slow, bones creaking. "You should rest," he said. Sarah shook her head, eyes fixed on the baby. "She don't rest? I don't rest." He nodded, ashamed to have spoken. He poured coffee into a tin cup, hands rough from work, and leaned against the table, watching the dawn break through cracks in the window. For a while, neither spoke. The fire popped. The baby suckled softly. Then Sarah broke the silence. "They're talking in town." Eli froze, cup halfway to his lips. "About us," she continued. "About me coming here. About this." He set the cup down. "Let him talk." Her voice trembled. "They say things, Eli, things that make me want to run." He met her eyes then, blue and tired, full of a courage that had been used up too early. "You walk out that door, and she dies," he said. "Let him talk." The words came out harsher than he meant. She flinched, then looked away, holding the child closer. Silence again, heavier now. Eli turned back to the window. Two riders passed far down the trail, dust trailing behind them like smoke. Men from town, maybe, or just the kind who liked to watch others fall. He said nothing. Hours later, under the sun's blaze, Eli worked the corral, mending a fence post split by last night's wind. Sweat ran down his temples. The hammer slipped twice. He could hear the baby crying faintly from the house, Sarah's voice soothing her, soft as wind through wheat. The sound eased him, even as it tore at something he couldn't name. By noon, he was back at the cabin. Sarah stood by the stove, stirring cornmeal into boiling water. The baby slept in the cradle, cheeks flushed with life again. He paused in the doorway. "She's getting stronger." Sarah nodded without looking at him. "You should eat." "I will." But neither of them moved for a long moment. Then came a sharp knock, hard and fast. Eli's hand went to the revolver hanging by the door. The latch creaked open. Reverend Pike stood there, hat in hand, eyes full of that brand of pity that always hid judgment behind it. "Brother Carson," the preacher said, stepping inside. "I've come to talk." Eli's jaw worked. You picked a poor time. It's never a poor time to mind the soul. Pike's gaze slid towards Sarah, who'd stepped back, clutching her shawl around her. Miss Harper, you're here often, I see. Sarah's voice was small. I'm helping the child. Pike smiled thinly. Helping, yes, but help can look unseemly in the eyes of others. Eli set the hammer down slow. Others can shut their damn eyes. Pike's smile faded. Eli, you've lost much. Don't lose your place with the Lord, too. This arrangement. Say one more word against her, Eli said quietly, and you'll ride home without your teeth. The preacher's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, all that could be heard was the ticking of the clock, the steady breath of the child. Finally, Pike tipped his hat, face red. You'll answer for this, Carson, one way or another. When he left, the dust from his horse lingered outside the window like smoke from a shot that hadn't yet been fired. Sarah stood frozen, eyes glistening. He's right, she whispered. They'll come for you. They won't, Eli said. They'll talk till their throats bleed, then they'll move on to someone else. That's all gossip's good for. Her breath trembled, and when the talk turns to anger, Eli looked at her, really looked this time. Then I'll handle it. She stared at him a long moment. Then she turned away, pressing her hand to her face, shoulders shaking. Eli took a slow step forward. Sarah, I'm not crying, she said quickly. Just tired. He didn't answer. He just reached out and set a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. The fire snapped again, small embers rising like tiny ghosts toward the chimney. After a long moment, she spoke, voice small. My boy was 6 months old when he died. Fever took him. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't cry. Just faded. I buried him with my own hands. No preacher. No one came. Her breath hitched. So, when I heard your baby cry that night, I thought maybe the Lord was giving me another chance to do one thing right. Eli said nothing, only lowered his head. The baby stirred in the cradle, breaking the silence. Sarah went to her, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. She's hungry again, she murmured, half to herself. As she bent to pick the child up, Eli spoke softly. You already done one thing right. She looked back at him. He meant it. That night, after the baby slept, Sarah lingered by the fire, her hair loose, catching the flicker of flame. Eli sat across from her, sharpening a dull knife, the scrape of steel the only sound. Outside, coyotes howled. The wind shifted, the smell of rain far off. Finally, she said, You ever think about leaving, Eli? Starting new. He didn't look up. This land's Martha's grave. Can't leave her behind. Sarah nodded, quiet. Then maybe start living again. For her. He stopped the knife, eyes meeting hers across the firelight. For a long time, neither spoke. The baby's breathing filled the quiet, small, steady, alive. When she finally rose to go, Eli followed her to the door. The night air was cool, full of the smell of sage and dust. Be careful on the trail, he said. I always am. She paused. I'll come by at dawn. He nodded once. She hesitated, then touched his arm lightly, just a heartbeat of contact, before turning away into the darkness. Eli stood there long after she was gone, the moon silvering the fence line, the wind whispering through the grass. Somewhere behind him, the baby stirred again, and the storyteller's voice, quiet and far away, seemed to echo through the dust. Mercy is a small thing on the frontier, small enough to fit in a girl's hand, strong enough to outlast the desert. The horse screamed before the shot rang out. Eli dropped the feed bucket and spun, dust flying from his boots. Down by the fence line, smoke drifted from the barrel of a rifle. His chest went cold. 3 riders were cutting across his field, faces wrapped in scarves, rifles resting easy in their hands. The lead man raised a gloved hand in greeting that wasn't friendly. Eli stepped forward, hand near the revolver on his hip, the one he'd sworn never to use again. Morning, the lead rider called, voice dry as gravel. Mr. Reeves sends his regards. Says you've been slow to answer his offer. Eli's eyes flicked to the dead horse lying near the trough, blood darkening the sand. You tell Reeves this land ain't for sale. The man laughed. It ain't a sale, Carson. It's a surrender. Another rider spat into the dust. You got till sundown tomorrow. Then we come back and burn what's left. Eli's hand twitched, Just once, but he held it still. You done? The lead man smiled. We done. He tipped his hat mockingly. Give our love to the milk girl. Eli's jaw locked. The rifles but shifted under his fingers, but the riders were already turning, their laughter echoing across the plain. The wind rose, sharp and dry, whipping grit into Eli's face. He watched them go, the shape of them shrinking against the pale horizon. By the time he reached the cabin, the dust had turned the sky the color of old bones. Sarah stood in the doorway, holding Clara tight. What was it? She asked. He wiped the sweat and grit from his brow. Reeves's men. They want the ranch. Her eyes widened. While you do, he didn't answer. His gaze slid past her, toward the grave under the cottonwood. That night, the wind didn't stop. It groaned through every crack in the cabin, rattling the shutters like bones in a box. Eli sat by the fire, silent, a bandage wrapped around his forearm where a splinter of wood had cut him earlier. Sarah sat across from him, the baby asleep in her lap. They'll come back, she whispered. I know. You can't fight them alone. He looked at her, eyes hollow but steady. Ain't the first time I fought men like them. She frowned, confused. You were a soldier? He stared into the fire. The flames caught in his eyes, flickering like ghosts. Worse. Sarah waited, but he said nothing else. The air in the cabin grew heavy with the unspoken. Finally she asked, Who are you, Eli? He set his jaw. Just a man who's done things he can't undo. Outside, the wind rose to a shriek, lifting dust and sand against the walls. When morning came, Eli was gone. Sarah found him out back, digging under the porch with a shovel, the muscles in his arms corded tight. Each stroke hit the dirt with the rhythm of old anger. What are you doing? She called. He didn't answer. A few more strikes, then the shovel hit something solid. Eli knelt, brushed the dirt aside, and lifted out a long wooden box wrapped in oilskin. When he opened it, sunlight caught on cold steel. Sarah froze. Inside lay 2 revolvers, black, polished, deadly. The kind that had ended more prayers than any preacher could count. Eli's voice was quiet. Used to be folks called me Deadeye Carson. Sarah stared at him, horror and disbelief tangled in her breath. You were a killer. He didn't deny it. He just checked the chambers, the sound of the cylinders spinning smooth and final. She stepped forward, tears welling. You swore off it. You said. I swore to Martha, he said, cutting her off. And she's gone. Sarah shook her head. This ain't what she'd want. He looked up at her then, eyes cold, mouth hard. No, but she'd want the baby to live. The wind whipped between them, carrying the smell of storm and dust. Later, as the sun began to fall, Sarah went to fetch water from the well. The bucket had barely touched the surface when a horse neighed behind her, startled, wild. She turned. 3 men again. Reeves's. Their faces half-shadowed by hats, their grins wide and mean. Afternoon, miss, one drawled. Reeves sent for a word. Sarah backed away. Eli's not here. Oh, we figured he'd be out playing hero. The man dismounted, eyes raking her from head to toe. Guess we'll leave him something to come home to. Her heart slammed. She bolted toward the cabin, skirts twisting around her legs. The first man lunged, catching her shawl. It tore, and she fell hard into the dirt. Before she could scream, a voice cut through the air, cold, measured, unmistakable. Let her go. The men froze. Eli stood by the barn, revolver drawn, the wind kicking dust around his boots. He walked forward slow, like a man returning to something he'd buried long ago. Carson, one of them muttered. Heard you quit the trade. Guess I just started again. The hammer clicked back. The first shot tore the silence apart. Then another. When the smoke cleared, 2 men lay still in the dust. The third bolted for his horse, shouting curses as he rode toward the horizon. Eli stood, breathing hard, the revolver steady in his hand. The wind tugged at his coat, at the bandages on his arm, at the ghosts in his eyes. Sarah scrambled to her feet, trembling. Eli, he holstered the gun without looking at her. Get inside. Pack what you can carry. She hesitated. You're bleeding. He wiped the blood from his cheek, just a graze. I've been worse. Where will you go? He looked toward the setting sun, the light burning red across the sand. Reeves's place. This ends tonight. Sarah's voice cracked. You can't win, Eli. He stepped up to her, close enough for her to see the tremor in his hands. It ain't about winning. For a moment, the world stood still, just the whistle of wind, the faint whimper of the baby inside. Sarah reached out, catching his sleeve. If you go, you might not come back. He met her eyes, quiet and certain. Then tell her when she's grown that her pa did one thing right. He turned away, mounted his horse, and rode out into the rising storm. Dust swallowed him whole. And somewhere, far away in the saloon of Red Hollow, the old storyteller's voice rose again over the creak of chairs and the clink of glasses. Lightning split the sky over Red Hollow, white fire cracking across the plains. Eli Carson rode hard through the storm, coat snapping behind him, hat pulled low. The rain came in sheets, washing dust and blood from his face. Every hoofbeat thundered like a war drum. Ahead, lights burned in Reeves's saloon, yellow squares against the black storm. Horses were tied out front, too many to count. Eli slowed, slid from the saddle, boots sinking into the mud. His revolvers gleamed beneath the brim of his hat, rain tracing lines down the barrel. Inside, laughter rolled, ugly and careless. He pushed through the batwing doors. Silence fell. Reeves sat at the far table, cigar in hand, boots on a chair, 5 men beside him. A bottle tipped over near his elbow. The smoke hung thick and still. Well, Reeves drawled, not even rising, if it ain't the milkman himself. Eli's voice came low, steady. You took enough from me. You don't take her. Reeves smirked. Sarah May? The stray? She's alive. For now. My boys wanted to have some fun, but I said no. Not till the papers are signed. He flicked ash onto the floor. You got land I want, Carson. Don't make this worse. The hammer clicked back. Eli's hand didn't shake. It's already worse. The room held its breath. Then the world broke open. Gunfire roared, deafening and fast. Glass shattered. Men dove for cover. Eli moved like a man born of dust and death. 2 shots, 2 bodies down. Reeves ducked behind the bar, shouting orders, but the storm drowned them out. One man lunged from the stairs. Eli spun, fired. The man's body crashed through the railing. Thunder shook the floorboards. Eli's shoulder burned. He fired again, wild, then ducked as bullets splintered the mirror behind him. Shards rained like ice. Smoke filled the room, thick and choking. Somewhere beyond the haze, Reeves shouted, You ain't walking out, Carson. Eli stepped through the smoke, slow, deliberate. Ain't planning to... He caught sight of movement near the door. Sarah, her hands were bound, face bruised but fierce. The moment he saw her, something broke loose inside him. Reeves rose from behind the bar, shotgun leveled. Eli fired first. The sound cracked through the saloon like thunder tearing open the sky. Reeves staggered back, eyes wide, smoke curling from his chest. He collapsed against the bottles behind him, glass shattering as he slid to the floor. Eli swayed where he stood, blood spreading dark across his side. The revolver slipped from his hand. Sarah was already moving, ripping the rope from her wrists, running to him. Eli. She caught him before he fell, her hands slick with his blood. Stay with me, please. He tried to speak, but only coughed, breath ragged. She's safe. Sarah nodded, tears mixing with the rain blowing through the broken door. She's safe. Good. His voice faded, the word barely a whisper. She pressed her hand to the wound, panic trembling through her fingers. Don't you die here, Eli. Don't you dare. He gave her a faint smile, small, almost peaceful. Don't got much say in it. The thunder rolled again, closer now, shaking the floorboards. Sarah leaned close, her voice breaking. I'll raise her right. I swear it. He met her eyes, breath shallow. Tell her. I wasn't always good. But I tried. Then he went still. The rain poured through the holes in the roof, pattering against the floorboards, washing the blood away grain by grain. Sarah stayed there long after the thunder faded, rocking him the way she'd rocked the child. Her hair hung wet over her face, her hands stained with the life that had saved hers. When dawn came, she'd buried him beside Martha under the cottonwood. The sky was pale and quiet, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. The baby slept in a sling against Sarah's chest, soft and warm. She whispered through the tears, "You'll never be alone." The wind rustled the branches above them, a sound like breath or a man's low laughter carried off into distance. Later, she saddled the horse and turned toward the road out of Red Hollow. The town watched from doorways as she rode past, heads bowed, eyes down. None spoke, none dared. At the edge of town, the old storyteller's voice rose again, carried by the wind like a prayer or a curse. They say he fell in that saloon with a gun in one hand and mercy in the other. They say the woman rode away with his child and his name, and that the land he died for bloomed green come spring. And sometimes, when the dusk turns red over Red Hollow, folks swear they see him still, riding slow along the cottonwood line, guarding the ones he left behind. The wind shifted. The child stirred and sighed, her tiny hand curling around the edge of Sarah's shawl. Sarah looked back once, toward the graves, the rising light spilling over them both. Then she turned her horse toward the horizon and rode on. The storyteller's voice lingered, fading into the hush of morning.